Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism podcast about urbanism and stuff. I am one of your hosts today, Alex Williams. Happy to be back. And I'm joined by my good friends, Nick Laporte. Say hi, Nick.
Hello.
And my other good friend, Ethan Myers. Say hi, Ethan.
It's beautiful to be back here with you guys, and it's beautiful to be doing another wonderful show. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you're not dead. We were a little bit worried last week. I was like, wait a second. Like, this is very unusual. So we're happy to have you back. We're gonna kick off with a little update from our friend Nick.
Yeah, this is something I talked about last week, which is a motion that's going to City Council in Vancouver to add more dedicated bus lanes in the city, along with actual enforcement, camera enforcement on the buses, because enforcement is basically zero when it comes to to cars and motor traffic laws in Vancouver, and this is one of them that just doesn't happen. One of the bus drivers we talked to said he's been a driver for 7 years, and he's only seen one time a driver has been ticketed for being in the bus lane when they shouldn't be, and it happens like constant, it's nonstop. Like we sat at the front of the bus and just watched going down one of the major routes, the 99 along Broadway, and it was just like constantly cars just popping in, someone hopping out, taxis, whatever, just constant. So it's a big deal. It's happening right now as we speak. People are speaking to council about this right now. A bunch of people from Vision Zero and Movement. We've had Dennis Agar from Movement on the show before, and yeah, they've been working with councillor to bring this forward. So hopefully it goes through, because this could be a big win for transit in the city and for everybody in the city. If we can make transit better, rapid bus lanes actually good, it will actually entice people to get out of their cars. Not everybody, but the people are on the edge will see a bus flying by regularly. You're like, well, I can get to work faster if I take that route. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. And then of course that clears up car lanes, and then if you're driving, if you have to drive, then it makes your commute easier as well. Yeah. This is kind of interesting to hear, because Calgary, we don't have a ton of bus lanes, but we have a few, and it's not really an issue that I've seen, at least, whether I've been driving or on the bus. It's not something that I've noticed happens too often. I did see somebody once in rush hour traffic poke out, jump into the bus lane on Crowchild Trail, but they got snapped up pretty quick by a cop.
There's your difference.
Yeah, and that's the only time. So I don't know. Maybe we do have better enforcement. Maybe people are expecting that enforcement. I also suspect that part of it is that Calgary has highways that are built out for like 3 million people, and we have half of that. So we have very comfortable traffic. The people who complain about traffic here, I don't think have ever driven anywhere else, honestly, because it's really not that bad. I was driving today during rush hour even, and it was totally fine. But yeah, so I'm excited to see how this goes for Vancouver, actually getting some enforcement in there and just putting the cameras on the bus. Like, that's
easy peasy. Pays
such
for
a simple fix.
Under 6 months.
Yeah,
it's such a simple fix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ethan, you've got thoughts on Sacramento.
Absolutely. So, folks, I was gone last week because I was in the wonderful city of Sacramento, and there are really two things that I noticed while I was in the city of Sacramento. So, first off, if you don't know, Sacramento has a light rail system that consists of 3 lines, and it's okay. It definitely needs some improvement, but it's definitely a good start to a system. The main problem is that they're really just... It's a problem with anything that runs at grade. It's just running trains at grade, because when you're running light rail or a streetcar down a street, you run into the issue quite a bit of just having to stop service because someone parked their car a little too far out off the curb, and that'll actually just jam up train traffic for pretty much the entirety of the system. So yeah, those things are they really suck. They cause pretty major delays, and cities should work on reducing, if not eliminating, pretty much anything like that. It's just it really does show the downfall of running at grade with the street on any light rail. And 2, street trees. Sacramento is absolutely loaded with street trees. I've seen a lot of cities with good street trees, but Sacramento probably takes the cake for me. A lot of the streets in the city are pretty well shaded, to the point where even during the hot 100-degree days of summertime that they get there, you'll have these nice street trees and they'll cool down that sidewalk temperature to like 85 degrees, to where it really just is a much more comfortable experience to walk in. So don't ever doubt the importance of street trees. They are absolutely incredible. And I mean, there are quite a few other thoughts about Sacramento. They'll come out later eventually, but those are the main two ones.
Yeah, street trees, huge deal. Like, just having that, like, you'll notice when you're walking around on a hot day, just being in the presence of a tree just kind of automatically has this cooling effect. And and if you can have a good urban canopy that kind of covers the roads and covers the sidewalks, covers those impermeable surfaces that get really hot during the day, you can do some real nice cooling with those, which is great. I'm going to talk about Calgary's new arena. We had an event on Monday talking about this, and it was nice to finally see the design. The previous design, I'll pull up a picture. Let me see. Actually, I'm not sure if I can find the old design, but it was not good. Okay, the old design looked like a movie theater. We call it the Victoria Park Cineplex because that's what it looked like. It was awful. It was like really, really bad. And so that was one of the biggest things going into this. Obviously, there are a lot of other things that frustrate people about this arena. We won't get into that here. We'll talk mostly about the built environment here. But this arena looks much, much better. We were all worried, but things came through. Let me pull up the picture here and share my screen with you. Here we go. Perfect. So this is the Scotia Place, is the name that they revealed. Everybody's kind of already just calling it the Fireplace because you can see kind of the Flames design up there, which is for the Calgary Flames. That was part of the deal, is that the Calgary Flames will stay in the city. So we're really hoping that this ends up looking cool during the day too, not just in the evening. Everybody was kind of like, they only showed us evening shots. And so is it only going to look good with these LEDs lighting it up as it gets darker out? But the good news is that it has actually a lot of street activation. You can see there's some nice plazas around there. Let me share my other screen here and show you the lot that it's going to be on. So it's actually going to take up a pretty huge amount of space here.
It looks pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah,
I do like the design. We all we were like, oh, is it gonna be bad? You know, but no, it's all right. So the lot that it's on will take up this whole thing, kind of this white square that I've drawn here.
So like just north of where the Saddle Dome is?
Yeah, so the Saddle Dome's right here. And the Saddle Dome, of course, is like an iconic design. Let's see if we can get let's clear measurement. Can I drop a person? How do I drop a little fella? There we go. So the Saddle Dome, like, it's this iconic design, right? We all like the way that the Saddle Dome sits against the city skyline. But we're pretty optimistic about the new arena. It's going to be right near the Green Line station. I believe the Green Line station will be on this lot here, I think. And I believe kind of one of the places that is thought that we might end up having the kind of Calgary Central station is actually right here. So that might be nice. We'll have like high-speed rail going right to this station here, the Green Line right here, and the arena right here. The new expanded BMO Center is right here, biggest convention center west of Toronto, I think, and in Canada at least. So there's some good stuff happening there. We'll do some housing and hotels and stuff in the area, but I'm optimistic about the design. There will be 3 restaurants that can be swapped from facing inside the building to facing outside the building, and kind of activate that streetscape there, as well as a food hall and a few other things. So instead of just being inward focused, which is very much what the Saddle Dome is right now, like the Saddle Dome, it's all inside. Like you park there, or you get off the train there and you go inside, and that's where everything is. This is going to be a little bit more outward focused, which is something that we like, creating community spaces that everybody's able to enjoy, whether or not they're going to the hockey game that night. So yeah, Austin messaged me and told me that I had to make sure I talked about it. So yeah, Ethan or Nick, I know you've got something you want to add.
Well, I just love the nickname of the fireplace is so good. But I did want to talk about Patreon, and thank our new patrons. We've had several people join recently, so I'm just going to name a few people we have here who've joined us. So we've got Bjorn, Eric A, Ben Shing, Skitch. We've got Jay Schroeder, Sarah K, Mary, and Alexi S. So thank you for supporting us here on Patreon. And if you would like to join us on Patreon, just go to Patreon at Radio Free Urbanism. You can get the live show and join the live chat that we have at 3 p.m. most Wednesdays, along with access to the Discord and early access to the show.
Yeah, sweet. I'm excited that so many people are on there. That's kind of
it's really
fantastic.
exciting.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
Thank
it makes
you so
me
much.
feel cool and
then
popular.
you can make Austin not feel alone in our chat.
Yeah. Yeah, Austin is listening live. I think he's the only one tuning in live right now. But yeah, he agrees the old design sucked so hard. And he says, can't wait to enjoy a brewski on the outdoor patio at -40. And I don't drink. And he says, and only 1 block away from a future Alberta high-speed rail station. So it's a pretty good spot. And yeah, like we said, if you want to join Austin in the live chat there and kind of participate in the show as we go, you can sign up to the Patreon, which is patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. Let's get into our news stories here.
Yeah,
Nick,
let's
if you want
do
to take
it.
us away.
All right, this is coming from Toronto, my old stomping grounds, and a driver of the recent Indy race that was happening in the city. He experienced some traffic problems, like a lot of people do in the city, because, it's choked with traffic. It's a city of, I think the metro's like close to 7 million people. Toronto proper is probably over 3 million at this point, and they only have 2 major metro lines. What the fuck are they doing down there? That's a good question. What have they been doing for the past 30 years? Who knows? Either way, traffic's terrible in that city, especially if there's events going on, especially if there's an Indy race that kind of zips downtown and closes off a bunch of streets, makes it really bad. Anyway, this driver had to, his name is it Lochie Hughes? I don't know. L. Hughes, he's an Australian driver, had to get out of his car and take a bike to get to the race because the traffic was so bad. And it just goes to show how easily you can move around a city core on a bicycle when you get out of your car. It's just incredible. I love it. It's fantastic. It's just a good way to highlight how efficient micromobility is within a packed city.
And I think, too, also in a packed city, how important it is to build quality bike infrastructure so that, like, being able to do that is easy. Because a lot of people, I think, even though a bike might be able to help you get there more efficiently, if you don't have the safe infrastructure to kind of assist you in doing that, because face it, in a city, we can only build the roads so wide, right? You can only add so many bridges. Like, that's the deal. With density, you got to have these other options, and cycling is a great option. But a lot of people might not have been as willing to get out of their car and hop on a bicycle if there's not decent bike infrastructure there too.
Absolutely. And thankfully, they're moving in the right direction in Toronto. Things are moving forward. They've had some setbacks. I mean, everybody knows the infamous line from Rob Ford, the war on cars ends now. And that was the inspiration for the War on Cars podcast. Their name, at least, was from Rob Ford, the old crack smoking mayor that they had for a while. Rest in peace. So yeah, they've had some ups and downs, but Olivia Chow's in there right now. Has she been doing a lot for cycling? Even though she does bike to work, I haven't seen a lot of stirs. I don't know though. I'm not like keeping my finger on the pulse of the Toronto cycling scene, but I've seen different things, right? They're like ticketing people in High Park for going too fast on their bicycles and stuff. It's just both ways. But this is a good story in my opinion. This is wake up call for people that we need to have good infrastructure to get people around our cities because it's just not, you can't do it in cars. We don't have more room for cars on our streets, but we have more room to move.
Especially a city like Toronto where you really do have that, it's really hitting the point where you cannot widen freeways anymore. And pretty much every city in the US and Canada is like that. But I think Toronto is really, at least from what I've heard, it's really kind of hit its maximum when it comes to just traffic that it can handle at all. So, yeah, good bike infrastructure and good transit, too, because not everybody is going to be able to bike super long distances or use a bike for every trip. And, I mean, like I said earlier, Toronto's known for its streetcars. So, giving those priority because I know I've seen, God knows how many photos and videos I've seen of Toronto streetcars just stuck because some idiot decided to idle right out in the middle of the road for 15 minutes and it just backs up the whole system. So taking care of your transit and your cycling infrastructure, I know that streetcars and bikes have their kind of issues together because, streetcar tracks, but having that dedicated infrastructure can solve those issues and, get people moving through our city faster because, the car is not made for every trip, especially not in the city.
Yeah.
No.
Signal priority for those streetcars. Holy crap. That's what they're missing big time. And enforcement, too, like we just talked about in Vancouver with enforcement. Enforcement on that, like people blocking the box, people parked in the way of the streetcar, stuff like that needs to be enforced. It's just a perennial problem we have, it seems, in many North American cities where enforcement just doesn't exist. I have a confession to make. I got 3 tickets when I was in the Netherlands driving. 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For going 102 over the 100-kilometer speed limit.
Really? Wow.
So, yeah.
All right.
That's how they smack down on you and they keep you in line, right? It wasn't a lot of money, but it was still, I'm like, oh. Yeah. You got to be careful. We don't have that here.
Yeah, no. I was going more than that on the highway this morning, picking up siblings from the airport.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
It's like I talked
to
Lucy Maloney in Melbourne, same thing, right? They have speed cameras everywhere. You go 3 kilometers over, boom, ticket in the mail.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
It's called the speed limit for a reason. People treat it like it's the minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess we have to really take that more seriously. I mean, so on my way to the airport this morning, I drove through a few construction zones. And construction zones and playground zones are no speed zones for me. Like 100%, you slow right down to that speed limit sign, right? And I was kind of surprised because I don't drive a ton. I've probably driven 10 times in the last year since getting rid of my car. And I was kind of surprised how much everyone just kind of maintained their speed through the construction zone, kind of winding up like driving 20 kilometers over the speed limit, because most people say like, well, do they enforce it? Do they really enforce it? And so we make these rules, but we don't take them seriously. And I think that's a problem with trust in the system, right? Like if you say, hey, don't do this, but then if people keep doing it anyways, it doesn't really matter. Well, that's a really quick way to not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the only time that I saw people slow down to that 80 kilometer an hour speed limit through these construction zones was when we saw a cop having pulled somebody over on the side of the road. Then everybody slowed down while they went past the cop. And then I had people blowing past me again. And so I think it's really important to take that seriously. And going back a little bit to what Ethan said too about having these options, like having options for a variety of mobility, a variety of ways to get around the city. Because like you said, not everybody can bike. And so you have some transit options or you have some driving options if their trip requires that, right? Having those options in the city so that people can actually get around, right?
Yeah. And to your point about the speed limit and having these laws, even more important, as we know, broken records here on this podcast, but the built environment, having the built environment designed in a way that you'll go to the speed limit. I was in Rotterdam and it was a 50 kilometer per hour street as per my whatever GPS thing. There was no way I was going to go 50 kilometers per hour. I was like, I am Like I was going 30, maybe 40 max. It was like, this is
Right.
not going to be comfortable at 50K. I'm like in the city with like pedestrian bump outs and stuff like that. It just wasn't
Yeah.
going to happen. And that's what
Yeah.
we need to do. We need to change our massive stroads that are built like highways and make them more comfortable so that people slow down a bit.
Yeah, and I do wonder about that with construction zones, because another space where people actually slowed down to that 80 kilometer an hour speed limit was where there was large equipment, heavy equipment on the side of the road, and it was and it was encroaching on the lanes, right?
Yeah.
That's one spot where people really, really slowed down and took it seriously as well. And so, yeah, the built environment, how do we present our construction zones, our playground zones, our residential streets in a way that says like, no, but like seriously, people live here, or people are working here, or people are playing here, right? No, seriously, you need to slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Give you a speed
something
bump.
to consider.
Soft speed bump. That's the best we can do.
Yeah, that's
Soft
it.
speed
Sorry,
bump, and
nothing more.
there will be plenty of enough space to wiggle around it if no one's parked right next to it. So
Yeah,
people
yeah.
just around
Yeah,
the speed bump.
We had so at the mall near my house, South Center Mall, we had there's like a huge parking lot, and one part of this parking lot is never filled, never ever. Nobody ever parks there. It's always empty.
I'm shocked.
And right, yeah, an overbuilt parking lot. You don't say. So we had there are speed bumps along kind of the road that goes along this parking lot, but people always drove around the speed bump. So in the winter, you can see the speed bump is still covered in snow, and everybody's going around, right? Clearly, there's this, kind of the car version of a goat trail, right? There's a desired path that goes around the speed bump. Always. I remember my mom going around that speed bump as a kid. Just recently, in the last year, though, they added concrete barriers along there, though, so people can't do that anymore. Again, the built environment, like, if you want people to take it seriously, you have to take it seriously.
Build bollards everywhere.
Yeah. We love some good ballers.
No, seriously, they're insane for just any kind of traffic calming. Street trees are great. Chicanes and everything. Rollabouts are great, but
Yeah.
the bollard
Yeah.
is king.
Have you guys seen the video? There's a video in the UK somewhere where there's these two bollards to get onto the street that are super narrow, and every car that comes up to it, they just like creep right through it, right? Because it's
because they're kind of like sharp too.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Like they're serious.
The UK loves their bollards from everything I've seen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They
They've got
do.
some really cool ones too that like move. Not only the retracting ones that go up and down, but some that like come from the side and like move on a track and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
Some cool
Interesting.
ones for sure in London. Yeah.
That is very cool. Yeah, they kind of have an art to it. We're going to move to the next story, though. I'm going to whisk us away to the beautiful land of Chicago, a city where I've never been, but maybe Ethan can give us some insight. But this headline from Sportsnet, it says, Bulls Blackhawks owners unveil $7 billion plan to transform the area around United Center. And so the owners of the Chicago Bulls and the NHL's Blackhawks unveiled a $7 billion plan on Tuesday. That was yesterday. To replace the parking lots surrounding the United Center with green space, mixed income housing, a music hall, and more. So this area is going to get livened up with a whole ton of stuff. It sounds like. So that's pretty exciting. I haven't looked too deep into this, but this was a story I wanted to bring up. Maybe Ethan, if you want to give us some insight about this area.
Absolutely, Alex. Absolutely. So this project is nicknamed the 1901 Project. It's kind of been like low key in the talks for a while now, but I'm pulling up Google Earth here, and actually I have it saved from a little bit ago. But this is the United Center. It's on the west side of Chicago, the near west side, and if you can see, pretty much the entire land use around the stadium, it's just parking. It's just there's nothing but parking. So it's not like parking garages. It's just surface parking. There's not a single parking. There's no efficient parking around here. It is just the worst you can imagine. So obviously, the owner of the Blackhawks and the Bulls both of them have come to this agreement to basically do a $7 billion redevelopment. We'll see if they want to take in any public money for that. They haven't explicitly asked the city for it or the state or anything for it. But this plan is basically going to remove a vast majority of this parking, and the last little bit that'll be left will be in a parking garage. But it was from the site where they're proposing this, but they're looking at adding in over 1,000 affordable housing units, and that's not including the market rate ones. There's going to be a whole bunch of new businesses because this is mixed use. And this is also going to pair right up really well with a new infill station that we talked about probably about a month ago on the show. But here, let me go to it over on maps. But this right here, this little empty lot right here, this is going to be a future CTA station. So there will actually be much easier access to the stadium and the surrounding, mixed-use district that'll actually be able to provide, some really solid transit access by metro to the actual stadium much easier than before. Right now you can get there by buses, but most of the L stations are a little too far away.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Austin said in the chat, about time United Center gets rid of their many blocks of surface parking, also not super close to transit, like a 10 to 15 minute walk. Which 10 to 15 minute walk isn't horrible, but it'd be great to have better access, especially if you're going to build a better urban environment where people actually want to spend time. I think there's a huge opportunity for these sports franchises to actually be able to get their people hanging around them. And I mean, they're a business. Obviously, they want to make money. This will help them make money, building places that people want to be instead of popping in for the game and piecing out. You can have pre-game programming, post-game programming, and hopefully build, a little bit of team pride in the process. There's a lot of options that you can kind of take advantage of when you build an environment where people actually want to hang out. And it's nice to see too, this area is a pretty solid grid. Chicago has a pretty solid grid, and so they have a lot of opportunity here. And it's great that they're seeing that and actually going to make something out of that.
Yeah, it's becoming a good bike city too. They're building lots of good cycling infrastructure. What I like about this is we're seeing this more and more in different places. Didn't we talk about a Kansas City similar thing going on there a while ago? It's a few months ago.
I don't know if Kansas City is doing anything. I know they're the Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs play.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of the poster child as the horrible example people use when they're talking about poor land use around stadiums. So I don't know if they have plans.
I can't remember where it was. I know we talked about another one like this, but yeah, this is fantastic. At first, when I saw this in our forum here, that I thought it was just basically a new stadium being built. I'm like, that place isn't that old. It's 30 years old or something.
Yeah, it's pretty new.
Yeah, it's not that old.
On the newer end, at least mid-age for a stadium.
It's middle age, I'd say, yeah, for sure.
But I mean, this is just huge because, I mean, obviously our cities are built for people, not for cars. And turning a whole bunch of very, very valuable real estate that is quite close to transit, that's going to be opened up to a whole host of new spaces for people to occupy, new businesses to open up, and a whole bunch of new tax revenue for the city to use. But this hasn't been without controversy already. Because people are upset that they're not going to have a place to park to get to the games.
Oh no! If only there was a way to get to the game that didn't require a car.
If only.
You know what? This is something that's really interesting. So Austin and I actually we biked to a lacrosse game here in Calgary. We biked to the Saddle Dome and watched a lacrosse game. We were the only people who biked there. We were the only people using that bike parking at that time. There were a lot of people who drove, but also there were a lot of people who took transit because it's a great way to just efficiently get somebody to and from a place. You can also go to that place, enjoy your beers, and not have to worry about getting home afterwards, right? And so I think that's a great opportunity to build additional transit. And I think it's something that if people see and people use, they'll say, "Oh, actually, that was great. That worked fine. That wasn't an issue at all." So I'm optimistic, and obviously they're still going to have a parkade here. I'm sure. Like there will be some. There will be parking.
There has to be.
You
right?
know. Yeah. Like same thing. Like the new arena that's being built in Calgary is coming with a parking structure, and of course they're going to try and make it look not horrible and brutalist. Add some artwork onto it. But there's still going to be parking, and maybe this way you'll actually just get to enjoy the space instead of wandering through an endless parking lot.
But what about my tailgate? Come on,
right? And you know what? Actually, and there are ways to build areas like this that still allow for tailgating. I know Calgary has kind of a down the road plan for our football stadium. That also permits tailgating. They're just changing a little bit the way that we're doing that.
Yeah.
And so this is still an option. This is still a thing that we can do.
Yeah.
I will say tailgating is not as much of a cultural thing in Chicago compared to other cities. And that's mainly because of stadiums like Wrigley Field in Chicago already existing, where you don't get the tailgating per se, but you get a whole crap ton of bars and a literal whole neighborhood that has built itself around the sports stadium. And in Wrigley Field's case, Wrigleyville kind of originated organically and has gotten some redevelopment projects as of recent. But I mean, like, this kind of project, I mean, people really... Yeah, sure, some people are really into tailgating, but a vast majority of the people don't care. Totally. And they're just going to go to the bars around the stadium anyways.
And I think most people tailgate because there aren't things around the stadium, right? Like if you provide other options. And I think too, like providing housing and other shopping and other amenities around this area too, it'll also benefit the people because this is also like in a neighborhood. This isn't like right downtown. And so there's like single family homes down the street from this. And so I think those homes also have the opportunity to benefit from some of the businesses that will just like open up and be open for them on like a regular Tuesday.
Yeah. I think there was a good example I have when I went with my wife to the Taylor Swift concert. I didn't go to the concert. I was outside, but we biked there together. Obviously, I was highlighting the cycling part of it, but the vast, vast majority of people who got there took transit because it's basically connected to a transit station. And that being said, there's also car parking there, and it's basically right connected to a motorway. People were driving there too. People were taking taxis when they left, right?
Yeah.
But they have options. They have options if they want it.
Yeah.
But the best part was I didn't go to the show. I was outside. I was able to wander around this lovely neighborhood in this lovely shopping district. I went to an arcade for a bit. I went to a restaurant. There was things to do. It wasn't just like this barren place where, there's people hawking their wares outside trying to, sell tickets at first and then selling whatever junk afterwards to people coming out of the stadium. It was really nice.
Yeah. You can build an overall really pleasant experience for a variety of people who are looking for a variety of things out of these events.
Exactly.
So I'm optimistic about this. I'm glad, like I'm always happy when things like this come from like a kind of free market solution where a business, like a company, somebody looking to make money sees like, oh, actually like urbanism is good for business. It is good for business to have transit options and bike lanes and build a parkade instead of all this surface parking and to build a little bit more densely and to add housing so that people are right there. Like this is good for small businesses to have housing right there. So I'm optimistic.
There was
about
one
this.
more thing I wanted to add here. This is a comment in the Sportsnet article that you shared. At the bottom, he says, the last time I went to an NHL game in Chicago, the hotel clerk told me to get out of that area area within half an hour of the game ending, ... as to suggest or at least imply that it's not safe and this is not what we want because this is a dangerous area. Well, a lot of things that happen when you redevelop an area, it's, that the G word is going to come out, but some gentrification, it changes the landscape of this area, right?
Yeah.
And also...
The The near west side has
having more people around too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ethan.
No,
go
you're
ahead.
all good. I'm just saying for this specific example, the near west side has been an area that's been generally known to be a bit lower income than other parts of the city. And yeah, you see the United Center surrounded by parking lots. And you also see, you know, if you see UIC, it's just to the east of the stadium. That's also in the near west side. Both of those were basically projects that just flattened, that were slum clearance projects. The United Center isn't that old itself. It's like 20 or 30 years old. It opened in the 90s, but the area has been a stadium area since the 60s when they actually did level a whole bunch of neighborhoods. So it's really kind of just a recovery from the old, you know, slum clearance days of the 60s.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember is that the reason we have a lot of these surface parking lots is because people were displaced in order to build those surface lots. It's the same thing, the stadium that's being built in Calgary, that new arena, that used to be houses right there. Those were all homes before they were parking lots. And so it's optimistic to see things turning back away from parking lots, but it's disappointing that that's what happened in the first place, that people were displaced in order to build those parking lots. But let's move on to our next story. Ethan, we're still in Chicago. Yes,
we are, but we're going to go a little bit further east. So Chicago is pretty well known for its open recreational lakefront. It's got wonderful beaches pretty much all up and down the lakefront. It's got a wonderful bike and pedestrian trail that's separated for the two, so that way pedestrians get their own side and cyclists get their own. So it's really a wonderful, wonderful green space, and no matter where you're from, I would highly recommend going to check that out just because it's beautiful, and it's a really, really good example of how to do public green space and just park space for a city. Now, there is a problem with this, though, because just to the west of this wonderful trail, running up the entire lakefront of the city, is Lakeshore Drive. And that might just sound like a normal boulevard, but it's basically a freeway. It is, in all intents and purposes, a freeway. Now, the city itself has always been, you know, like, indifferent about this. You know, there's always been cut-unders to get to and from, you know, the lakefront, but there's one portion of Lakeshore Drive that is actually basically wedged, where the park space is so wedged up thin up against Lakeshore Drive and the lake itself that you actually get flooding on the lakefront trail, like from the lake when the water level's too high or there's high wave action. So basically there's a giant cut in your trail there. So what the city and the state want to do is they want to do a whole redevelopment of this little part of Lakeshore Drive. The problem is, though, is that while they want to add a whole bunch of park space in there, they want to keep the freeway and expand it. And they just recently decided on their wonderful plan. And this plan includes getting rid of a couple of the traffic lights that still existed. I know I said traffic lights. Lakeshore Drive is very, very weird. Yeah, this is one of the situations you'll get. This is basically, for all of our viewers watching or just listening in, this is basically part of an area that's an S-curve straight up on the lakefront. And you have a cyclist trying to get through this portion of the trail when there's high waves in wintertime. And they are just getting flooded and basically almost thrown back into the lake.
Yeah, it looks
it's not
dangerous.
A fun experience.
Yeah,
it is dangerous.
very unpleasant.
But their
Like
plan
almost-
is to...
Go ahead.
Their plan is to basically do a whole bunch of infill along the lakefront, as well as expand the Lakeshore Drive. So let me get the rendering here. If it wants to load, I'm just pulling this one straight off of Google here.
It's just such a beautiful place. It's insane that so many of our lake shores or seaside places are just smack down a giant freeway right beside it.
So the problem is that with this new rendering, there was a consideration for a bus lane on Lakeshore Drive because a lot of express buses use Lakeshore Drive. But the problem with it is that IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, and CDOT both rejected that design in favor of just adding one more lane to Lakeshore Drive. However, the RTA, which manages the CTA buses, Metra, and Pace, which is like commuter buses in the suburbs of Chicago, has pretty much told CDOT and IDOT to reconsider this option, because they obviously a bus lane would be better for transit. You're going to have, better services, and when it comes down to rush hour, buses do get stuck in traffic, and that's one of the problems that they often face. But if they gave this road a bus lane, you'd actually be able to see some traffic move a bit more freely. But yeah, the problem is that this is a one more lane project that's happening right on the lakefront. And while this design is technically going to add that, bit of gap space for, the lakefront trail, the real issue is that it's kind of the biggest amount of greenwashing you can imagine, because this really is no better than, say, like FDOT in Florida or TxDOT in Texas deciding to add one more lane onto their gargantuan highways. This is basically the exact same thing as that, but with a little bit of greenwashing to make you think that, hey, this is actually a really good, sustainable project. Because unfortunately, it's just, they have the option to do better by adding a bus lane instead of adding in a car lane, but the Department of Transit for both the city and the state is saying, we don't want that option. We just want an extra car lane. And it's really frustrating, especially seeing a city like Chicago, at least the leadership of its Department of Transportation's just so narrow-minded on focusing entirely on adding a car lane rather than, even truly legitimately considering an option that would add in, a bus lane.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super frustrating.
That's insanely frustrating. Like, it's such a simple thing. And like we talked about earlier, and we'll talk about again, but just like, buses make it better. Let's go. Come on. But one place I've been to was San Francisco, and they've covered a lot of one of their freeways that kind of goes towards the Golden Gate Bridge. And they've built a giant park there. I think they call it Tunnel Tops Park, because the basically freeway's covered, and it's a beautiful area, and you don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the Presidio over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think, like, you're talking about greenwashing these mega projects. These road projects are super expensive, super expensive. And trying to say, well, yes, we're going to add another lane, but we're going to do this other thing as well, and we're going to do this as well. And that's great, but that always drives up the cost of that project. And in a lot of cases, it might just be better to say, like, you know what, actually, we're going to turn one of these existing lanes into a bus lane. And that will reduce traffic because our buses will be able to move faster. We'll be able to get people places faster. And like Nick said earlier, a few of those people kind of on the edge saying, maybe I don't need to drive, but I do drive because the transit sucks. And so some of those people on the edge will then have the opportunity to get off the road. And then that way, if you need to drive your car, or if you want to drive your car, then you have a lightened up load there for you. And obviously, like, having the route for cyclists so close to the lake is also a problem. But I think, trying to, like, do these mega projects like the dig in Boston probably would have been just cheaper to say, you know what, we're actually going to get rid of this freeway completely and replace it with incredible transit service. It would have been cheaper, faster, safer, cleaner, greener, and so I think we have to kind of make those considerations when we're doing these big mega projects. And as much as I love the idea of like a capped freeway in some spots, because you can create this beautiful park on top and maintain the status quo for motorists, sometimes it's not maybe the best idea. Any other thoughts on this before we move on to some breaking news?
Da Bears.
Da Bears.
That's all I got. Sorry.
That's all you got? Oh,
no,
okay, perfect.
I think the real problem with this cost here that we're eventually going to see the number on, because they still have to do the study for this, is there's a whole crap ton of just filling in the lake that they're doing for this. They're adding like nearly a quarter mile of land to Chicago. They're basically building a huge chunk of new land for the city by just straight up filling in the water. So we'll see the cost on that one. We'll keep you updated on that, and when the $20 billion price tag drops for this, just as the starting estimate, we'll tell IDOT I told you so.
Yeah. Okay, Nick.
I've got some breaking news. This just in from Vancouver City Council. The motion for bus lanes in the city has passed unanimously. We'll be getting 5 extra dedicated bus lanes along major corridors in the city, along with ticketing systems, all by 2026. 2 a year minimum. Yeah, so that's good. Congratulations to everybody who's worked on that, because that's a big win.
Yeah, that is a huge win. I think it's important to remember, if you live in a North American city, we actually have a lot of good things going for us and a lot of positive movement toward change, and you can be part of that change. So contact like your local Strong Towns group, your local critical mass, bike advocacy groups, anything out there that kind of is your pet issue. Contact them and get involved, because you can actually make a difference in your city. But with that, we'll hop onto our listener mail. Ethan, do you want to take this first one?
Absolutely. Here? So this one comes from Rachel Leonardo, and she says, "My POV, I think buses are super underrated." I agree with that, especially in places where the terrain is mountainous and hard to drill through for train/other transit lines. Bus systems can actually be less harmful to the ecosystems that call these natural landscapes home. Check out the bus systems in the Basque Country province in Spain. All of their municipalities have a robust transit system that connect well with one another at the borders. Really opened my eyes to the full potential of what bus lines can be. So, gentlemen, how do we feel about buses? I'm sure we hate them.
Terrible.
Do you know, I'm really glad that Rachel said this. Rachel from Studio Leonardo, if people want to go check out her channel, former co-host of the show. I'm glad she said this, because I actually wanted to fight Sammy on last week's episode. I wasn't there. I was chatting with some city planners that day, so I figured that was a fair trade-off. But I was listening to the episode, and Sammy kind of mentioned this idea, and yes, I am calling him out. He mentioned this idea that, like, basically a bus is just like a train that hasn't been built yet, and that's wrong. That's not true. And I think he was like quoting somebody when he said that. Buses are a great way to fill out a system. Not everywhere in a network is going to require a train or be ready for a train or be sensible to have a train. Buses are great because they work on existing infrastructure. We see, like, okay, take the Green Line in Calgary as an example. We are working on building this multi-billion-dollar train project that I'm very excited for. I've been waiting for it my whole life. The original study for it was done in the 1980s, and it's a long time coming, and it's still going to be a little bit of time before it happens. Now, in the meantime, Calgary has built out 4 MAX lines, 4 bus rapid transit lines, to, varying degrees of that, bus rapid transit sticker. But we have bus lanes with those. We have a dedicated bridge with one of them. That bridge, which I think is actually built to potentially be swapped out for an LRT bridge in the future. Like, this is some really, like, forward-thinking things that can be done quickly, because those buses are the same vehicles that we're already using, right? Just the vehicle acquisition for LRT, it takes years and years and years to get done. Buses, usually if your city already has a transit system, there's already some sort of system set up to get new buses in the door as the old buses fail and break down. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to use buses. You also don't need trains everywhere. That's a really big upfront capital cost to build into your system when a lot of the time you need just a simple bus to just do a loop around a neighborhood and feed into, a more main bus service, right? So, or bus or rail service. So I'm huge fan of buses. I remember growing up, I was more like, oh, well, I'll just drive to the LRT and, take the train from there. But those higher order transit services do not exist without the lower order bus services. And so I think that's something really important to note. We need options. We need a variety of options. We need buses, we need trains, we need bikes, we need cars, we need all of these things in order to get around our cities and our regions. So that's my little rant that I wanted to share. I'm glad Rachel said something, and I had to add on to it. Nick, you can go ahead with your thoughts.
I don't even know what to say other than this
I give
guy's
you permission.
calling
I
out
release you.
Our guest co-host that we had on before.
Hey, I love Sammy. I'm the one that got Sammy on the show. Okay, I love Sammy, but I am calling him out for what he said. tell me when and where, and we'll have a debate maybe, or I don't know if we love Sammy. I'm not actually.
No.
I'm just saying.
But we do need more controversy on the show, so that's good to have.
That
more
is
controversy.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If anybody else wants to start drama,
I think we should get rid of all
dirt.
trains should go away for trolley buses. Trolley buses are the only way we should get anybody around. And if you disagree with me, go fuck yourself.
Oh wow, Ethan's coming out swinging.
That's right. We need controversy on this show. I'm coming out with controversy.
It's true. Okay, if listeners, I want to hear in the comments if anybody has anybody that we should go out and start beef with. Austin says monorails or bust. So he's staked his position.
Someone works for Austin.
Out
how's the job with BYD going? For those of you who don't know, BYD is a Chinese vehicle manufacturer that absolutely loves making monorails.
Okay, interesting. Okay, yeah, Austin does say ni hao in the chat here. So Austin knew what you were talking about. I'm glad Austin knew what you were talking about. I was lost. I thought I had no idea where we were going. Nick, please save me here. Say something controversial.
I got nothing right now. I don't know what to say. I was just going to mention trolley buses myself. We've already talked about buses on this podcast. With what's going on in Vancouver, obviously, I like buses, and they work for their purposes, and they are much more flexible. Trolley buses, maybe a bit less so than diesel buses, but man, I'll take them any day over the diesel buses. Like the diesel bus is like the lowest thing, like on the transit hierarchy, in my opinion, probably. Is there anything worse? Like tuk-tuks, but we don't have those here for good reason. Like, thank God.
The microbuses,
taxis.
Yeah.
The shuttle. The van pooling.
I mean, and like everything kind of serves its role, right? And I think we need to make sure that we foster that variety. If nobody ever sees Sammy on the show while I'm on the show again, I guess I started some beef. I'll send him a text and warn him that I called him out on the show before he listens and gets offended. Any other thoughts on this before we move to our next bit of listener mail?
All good.
Wow. Okay, so I just ranted that one away. Thanks for sending that in, Rachel. If you want to send us some listener mail, you can comment on our video on YouTube, or you can email us at radiofreeurbanism@gmail.com. Or, of course, like we'll see with this next one, you can join the Patreon and actually chat with us in the Discord server.
Yeah, we got a question here though. We have a listener mail comment from Jen Hall. You each get $5,000 to gift another host of the show one thing urbanist related: bike, first class train ticket, trips to Amsterdam. What are you gifting other today and why? Others today maybe. Yeah. You go first, Alex.
I go first. I just did
fine.
so much talking. It's going to be Ethan
yapped.
first.
Okay.
It's Ethan.
I'm going to do a fun thing here. I'm going to give my $5,000 to Alex here, and we're going to send him on Via Rail's premier route to Churchill.
Oh wow! Actually, no, that'd be actually super cool. See some polar bears.
Oh yeah, no, that's
Does Via have a route to
yes,
Churchill?
they do.
They do. Oh my
From
goodness.
Edmonton to Churchill.
That's amazing, actually. Okay, yeah, I'll gladly take that kindly gift you have given me. For me, I'm going to use this $5,000, and I'm going to first buy a bus ticket for Sammy, so that he can get some appreciation out there for buses. But after, I mean, that's a small amount. So the rest, I'm going to use for Nick, and I'm going to send Nick on an all expense paid trip to, where should I send Nick? Ooh, Chile. I'm going to send you to Chile.
Okay.
Because I just feel like it'd be interesting to get somebody talking about South American.
Right.
Get to
Well,
see
I
that
have a
wonderful
contact.
Santiago Metro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just sold my my old mountain bike to a Chilean guy who just moved here. So maybe I should call him up.
Oh,
and I
cool.
Could, the inside scoop.
Yeah, like it'd be interesting to see, because I do feel like in the online urbanist sphere, we tend to talk about how shitty North America is, and by North America we always mean like U.S. and Canada, right? We typically talk about the U.S. and Canada and how shit our cities are, and how much better we could do, and maybe sometimes the good things that we do. And then we also talk about how jealous we are of Europe and how jealous we are of Asia, and then we kind of
Specifically
forget
East
about
Asia.
Specifically East Asia, and then we kind of forget about all of these other places in the world, and I think one of those places is South America, but that is like, we live in North America, it's got to be pretty accessible to us, right? So that'd be kind of an
It's not that
interesting
close.
trip
It's-
to send you
It's
on.
like
It's not. Listen. It's not that close, but also like you're not flying across the Pacific to get there, right?
Yeah, it's only 9
like
hours
flying to
over
Europe.
2 continents. Yeah.
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 It's
Yeah,
the same
we-
as
you
flying
know.
to Europe, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's even
could
worse
do
for
it.
you
We could do it.
Canadians, but you know.
That's true. Or maybe we could drive. We could.
Oh, yeah.
Do you
Oh,
think we
across
could
the
make it through
Darien
the
Gap?
Darien Gap? Yeah,
That'll be fun.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. Real quick. You guys. There was one thing I considered doing with my car, was actually driving from Alaska to like the southern tip of Chile, and with my 1999 Toyota Corolla. I did like seriously consider doing that at one point. And then I
Drive
didn't,
it off the
'cause
tip right
that's
into
like
the ocean. Just like
yeah, honestly, like I thought about that, but then that's like super littering, and I'm like, well, I can't do that.
But I mean, it could be like some kind of new coastal project where the anemones will grow
Yeah.
on it or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be a really
Just gonna
poetic
drive
way
it
to get
right
rid
into
of
the
my car.
Drake's Passage. You know, that'd be a fun
Yeah,
place
just
for
like
it.
just drive it as far
What
as
about
I
the
can.
coral reef? You gotta help
Yeah.
make it grow again.
I don't think the corals are
yeah.
growing down there. I'm gonna be real with you.
That's we'll start a new project, Cars for Corals.
Well, that's because there's no cars down there, Ethan.
Well, you know
That's
what?
why the coral reefs coral reefs aren't
reef.
growing.
This is why the coral reefs aren't growing. It's because we're throwing cars into the water. You see, MARTA, when they were retiring their
Oh.
original stock, actually dropped some MARTA train cars into the water to turn into reefs.
Very
Interesting.
interesting.
Does it work?
I haven't seen anything on the effects on if it has, because it's only been like a year and a half.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to learn. Anyways, that's what I'm doing with my money. Nick, what are you
Mine's
doing?
going to Ethan, and that's because he needs to experience the Rocky Mountaineer in its full, because it is very expensive. It's like probably over $2,000
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
per
that's-
person.
I think it's like $6,000
Yeah.
bucks.
So you can
Yeah.
get most of the way there, because it is beautiful. I've never been on it, but I've seen it go by. I stayed at a friend's cottage. It's like north of Whistler somewhere. Incredible, on a lake. They had to moor a boat all year round if they want to get to it. Get on their boat.
Yeah.
Then, boat probably half an hour out to this community that's on the edge of the mountains. It's fucking wild. It's beautiful. It's like Hobbiton on the edge of the mountains. There's a waterfall behind it. I'm like, how did you get this place? Their parents bought it like
beautiful.
20 years ago. It's incredible. Anyway, the train goes right across it in the morning. And we watched it. We waved.
That's amazing.
It went by and all
wow.
the people waved at us. We're like, man, that'd be a fun ride.
And the people on the train are like, I saved up for this trip, but those people living there must be rich.
Yeah.
The Rocky Mountaineer is huge on my bucket.
Yeah.
There's another one in the U.S. too that's like one of those luxury train trips. I can't remember what it's called, but it's in like, I think it's in like east, or it's in western Colorado, like around Grand Junction.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's like I think it's by the same company, but yeah, it's also like up there like $3,000, $4,000 for a seat on it, and
Wow.
yeah, it's like insane luxury. It's like a land cruise. It's like the Rocky Mountaineer or what they have in Australia. The what is it, the GAN or something?
I don't know, but that's I love stuff like that. I think that's so cool. We all got some pretty cool gifts, but yeah, the Rocky Mountaineer. That's Ethan.
Let's
Enjoy that
go.
trip. I was actually thinking today. I was like, Ethan should come to Calgary, and I'll show Ethan around. You could do, because you've done your videos on the like unique trains.
Yes.
You could do a video on the steam train at Heritage Park.
That'd
be
There's
cool.
just a steam train park there.
Well, it's like a huge outdoor museum, and it's like. It's my favorite place in the city. It's super
Looks like the
cool.
Hogwarts Express.
Yeah, and we have just like an old CP rail steam train. It's let me find. Actually, I can find some footage about it if you guys want to make some noise for a second while I look for this.
I don't know what to do.
Those are the good
Yeah, but
noises.
for the Rocky Mountaineer, if you don't know what it is, it's a train that there's different lines to it, but essentially it goes from Calgary through Banff all the way to Vancouver, and goes up from Vancouver through Whistler to I think Quesnel, and then across into Alberta up to Jasper, and then back down. So it's like a crazy route through mostly BC and I guess the western part of Alberta. But I've never been on the train, but just driving around those areas was an incredible experience. Doing it on a train would be much better. It usually is. You get to sit and enjoy
The
it.
Rocky Mountaineer also operates in the U.S. too.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah, so you can take it from Denver to Moab, Utah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So you'll be running through like Glenwood Springs and the nice part of the California Zephyr.
Oh, man.
Essentially.
That's high on my list, the Moab. It's like, it's another world, right? It's just insane. Like, there's so many places in the United States where it's like, how is this even in the country? Like, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff. Here is the train here, Ethan.
Ooh.
You can enjoy the steam train. But yeah, it is pretty cool. We've had water restrictions in Calgary the past few weeks because of that water main break. Right. And so it hasn't been running recently.
Tragic.
But yeah, there it goes.
I've got a question. Is it ethical to tattle on people you see watering their lawns during water restrictions?
Yeah.
That's kind of, yeah.
Go for it.
Like I think a lot of people sometimes don't know about the water restrictions. Like, you'd be surprised how many people just don't know what's going on, right? Like, if they're not on social media and that's the tool that is being used to like talk about what is happening, then of course, like, some people just aren't going to know. Like, I mentioned to somebody once about something going on. Somebody is coming into the city after a while away, and I was like, oh yeah, like, we all smell a little worse right now because of the water restrictions. And he's like, water restrictions? I was like, oh yeah, actually, like, you should probably know about that. But yeah, what I'm showing here is just more footage of Heritage Park. We've got some old trains you can walk around and check out. And,
that's cool.
some of these trains, there's one of these trains that I think Winston Churchill and Queen Elizabeth both have ridden on, actually, like, across the country. Yeah, they had some pretty snazzy stuff.
Do those exist now?
yeah.
Are there like really, really fancy train cars these days? People just take private jets, don't they?
Yeah, so you can actually rent out private train cars and charter them on Amtrak trips. Alan Fisher did it a couple times recently. I can't remember what company he went through, but yeah, you can charter old train cars that are restored. Companies do that.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
That's super
Oh
cool.
yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an old New York
Yeah.
Central Railroad car that was like full restored to like it's like be somewhat modern, but then also have like all the old like niceness to it.
All right, guys, this is like peak goal here. One day we'll get to rent our own and have like a private party from like Boston to New York City or something like that.
What if we did just like, what if we just bought our own train car and we could
We'll
just
rent it out.
call it like the Radio Free Urbanism Express?
We paint it that dark green, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be pretty cool, actually. Here's actually, okay, at Heritage Park, there's also a car museum. And I think most of this is like one guy's collection that he just like lets the museum have, like as a place for him to store it. That's what I've heard. Ooh, there's a bicycle. Let's look at this. This is an old, this is like a gas powered bicycle.
Interesting.
Like an old thing. Yeah. So there's some pretty cool stuff at Heritage Park worth cheeking out. Yeah, there's a whole like Shell propaganda wing too. Yeah,
Wouldn't-
but
wouldn't be a
it's a cool
museum-
place. Highly recommend going.
Wouldn't be a North American museum without your wonderful energy sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this was fun. I'm glad I flipped through a little bit of some B-roll that I have there of Heritage Park. Do we have anything else we wanted to mention before we wrapped it up?
You know what I think we should mention?
What should we
Our
mention?
wonderful Patreon. Since if you made it this far, you might as well give it a check out.
You might as well pay us to be here. If you're still here, you might as
For
well
as
pay
little
us.
as $1 a month, you can join us on Patreon.
Just go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. This has been another great episode in the can. Thanks for joining me, guys. This was a grand and groovy time. Ethan, where can the good people here find you?
You folks can find me over at Climate in Transit on pretty much every social media except for Twitter. You can find me there at Climate Transit. Nick, where can we find you?
You can find me in places like YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at Nick the Door. And Alex, where can people find you?
People can find me at Humane Cities on Instagram and YouTube. This was grand and groovy. This was so much fun. Thanks for joining us. And Ethan, you got something to say?
Folks, train good, car bad.
2 wheels good.
And feet first.